Hello and welcome to another episode of Starside Chat. I am one of your hosts, Aaron, and with me as always is Zach. How's it going, Zach?
Good. Coming off of July 4th, Independence Day here in the U.S. I got a nice 4-day weekend. I don't know about you.
I did not. I got 2 Fridays. So we took Thursday was the 4th, so technically Wednesday was a Friday for me. And then I had to go back to work on Friday, and so that was another Friday for me. So I technically got 2 Fridays, but I also didn't get a 4-day weekend. So I'm trying to be positive about it.
I mean, a 3-day weekend's not bad either.
Yeah, very true. But did you light any fireworks?
I did not. No, there were a lot happening in the neighborhood though, so I got to watch a bunch of them.
I similarly, yeah. We basically just walked around my neighborhood, and it seems like everyone in my neighborhood has a bunch of very high quality fireworks that they shot off all last night and the night before. So great to see. But we got some game news to talk about.
We do. Yeah, we've been playing some stuff too, it seems like. So we got a lot of stuff to talk about. First up, I mean, this is, I guess, a couple weeks old because we didn't get to record last week, but let's talk about this Concord previews.
Yes.
There was a new gameplay today from Game Informer where they actually showed gameplay of it and got to talk about it. It looks more or less like Destiny, but Overwatch. Like if they took the engine for Destiny and made a hero shooter out of it.
It's got that, the thing that I think makes it feel the most like Destiny is the way that it's kind of like got a floaty jump, sort of. Similar to how like warlocks jump in Destiny and things like that. We were texting about this. I don't know why I thought this was a third-person shooter, but something maybe about the cinematic trailer that we got during Summer Games Fest made me think that. But in fact, no, yeah, it's first person. It does look very, very similar. Like the way you throw your grenades in the footage that they have also is very reminiscent of like a warlock. But yeah, I was not expecting this to look as Destiny as it does.
Yeah, it looks very Destiny. From what they were talking about in this gameplay that they showed, I think some of the higher-ups at the company that is making this worked on Destiny, which I guess makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can tell there's a dodge mechanic, it seems like, that sort of similar to Destiny. With the hunter, the way the hunter dodges, it'll like go out from first person into third person as the dodge happens, and then it goes back into first person. But there's a character that has like a revolver, and it's very much like a hand cannon from Destiny.
Yeah, and they even like throw a knife like a hunter does.
Yeah, and yeah, like you said, like throwing the grenades and everything. And they talk about how the sort of kill time is longer, a little bit more similar to Destiny, so you sort of have to rely on like throwing grenades and doing extra chip damage before you start shooting at each other in an encounter with an enemy, and that is also very Destiny like. So I kind of like the implication of that because I can enjoy Destiny PvP now and then. Sometimes I find it frustrating, but like and they also, I'm just rewatching this gameplay as we're talking about it, and like there's one of the grenades is basically straight out of Destiny, where you basically throw it on a wall and it sort of illuminates out to the side, and if anybody passes through that sort of illuminated area, it goes off, and so it's sort of like a mine that you've placed. But yeah, I think I was more impressed by this than I was expecting to be.
I agree. Yeah. When I saw I guess the fully cinematic trailer we got didn't blow me away, I have to say.
I think more and more of those are just like doing a disservice to the game than anything else. Because it was sort of the same reaction to the Dragon Age one, where everybody was like, why does this, solo story-driven RPG look like another hero shooter or whatever?
Yeah.
I think companies are trying to sort of, I don't know, hit a certain vibe with their trailers, and unfortunately they're doing the game a disservice because everybody walks away from them with a very different expectation from what the game actually is. And I think that happened a little bit with this game. But I'm very
famously,
curious.
what's the vampire game that Bethesda did that was a big bust?
Oh, Redfall?
Yeah, that first cinematic trailer also, people were like, what is this? And
Yeah.
then like they didn't even have good communication where they were like, oh no, actually it's not, you can play this solo. That came like 6 months later or something, which is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it is crazy that I don't know, they're just like misreading the room when they put these trailers out. And they're a little bit, I don't know, making them appear to be different than the game they actually are. Like, this is a big problem in mobile. It hasn't reached that point yet, but like when it comes to, I don't know about you, but every now and then I'll get like a trailer on my phone for some mobile game that the Play Store wants you to download. And it'll be like, check out this game. And when you actually go to the Play Store to like preview what it is, it's a completely different thing that doesn't even resemble remotely what the trailer showed. And it's just like,
I remember it was like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, there was a game trailer during Summer Games Fest time, I think, or maybe it was during the Game Awards, that was like Pedro Pascal. And he was like talking about like, there's a mystery to be solved. And in this game, I'm going to help you solve the mystery or whatever. And then it like cut to the game and it's just like, it looks like Bejeweled basically.
yeah.
And it's like, what's happening here?
You get that a lot in the mobile space. It'll be some big elaborate trailer that looks like a completely different game. They've like built an animation more or less to like show a game that doesn't exist. And then when you actually go to the page for the game, it's just like another match 3 game. And you're like, why? But yeah, the AAA game space hasn't reached that point yet, but they're getting close. I mean, the trailers are a little bit misleading sometimes. And I understand sometimes you want to like lead with your story and your characters and sort of, show off your game that way. But and certain games sort of lend themselves more to it than others where like, let's say you have like a 4X game and you do like a cinematic story trailer, like obviously that's not going to be representative of like the type of gameplay you're going to get, but I don't know. Somehow still this Concord game, the trailer just didn't really, feel representative of what you were going to get. But
are you going to jump into the beta? The beta's happening soon, I think, isn't it?
I'm curious about that now. I think you probably have to pre-order it to get access to it. So that's probably the one thing that will make me not want to do it. But we'll see. I also I need to play more Dragon's Dogma 2. And I've been like putting off playing more games. I've been reading a lot lately. So maybe we can talk about that later. But
I have a reveal about that as well.
Oh, really? Oh, save it for later for what we're playing, watching / reading. Maybe we need to expand that segment.
We could
to encompass reading.
Zach, what's your history with Crazy Taxi?
I was there. I played some Crazy Taxi on the old Dreamcast. My brother had a Dreamcast when we were younger, and every now and then he would let me play stuff like Crazy Taxi, or he might have had a couple other games. But what about you?
That's the main game I feel like people with a Dreamcast had. They had other games, but they definitely had a copy of Crazy Taxi. And also, I think it was briefly an arcade game as well that you could play at arcades. There was like a sit-down version of it that I think I played at like a Dave & Buster's. But I never had a Dreamcast. But I mean, it seems like a very beloved game. I think it had very good music back in the day that people liked a lot. But I believe it was Sega announced there's going to be a new Crazy Taxi, and it's going to be large-scale, open-world online. So to me, this sounds sort of like a GTA Online, but with like Crazy Taxi aesthetics. And obviously, I would guess there's probably not going to be a lot of shooting. I actually wonder if you'll even get out of your car. But I feel like this came out of nowhere, and everyone who I've seen talking about it is kind of like, yeah, I would check that out. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, Crazy Taxi has enough like nostalgia built into it that if it was just like a new Crazy Taxi, people would be like, yeah, I'll check that out. But Yeah, interesting that it's a large scale online game, like open world
I don't know how that's gonna
MMO
work.
driving game. That kind of doesn't make sense. But I guess technically isn't Forza Horizon like that type of deal?
Well, I mean, they have the drivatars that are always, but I don't know how live those are. Like, I don't know if I'm dropping into a world with actual people or just like ghosts of what they did previously.
Maybe it'll be more like, what was that? Writers Republic. Maybe it'll be kind of like that, but more Crazy Taxi aesthetic. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Like, were you picking up people and driving them somewhere, and then you just happen to be like alongside somebody else doing it? I'm very curious what this looks like.
It would be cool if there was some sort of asymmetrical gameplay where like you can be in the Crazy Taxi, but also you can choose to play as a rider or whatever, or someone who needs a ride. And that's like a different type of gameplay, but you get to pick where you want to go, and then you're dropped in the map, and then also maybe you're doing something while the player is driving you from...
What's the gameplay while you're riding around in the taxi?
Great question. Yeah, I don't know. They'd have to make it interesting. But it'd be interesting if you were picking up real people for some reason. I don't know. I don't know what this would look like or how far along it is. Sega seems to be doing a bunch of crazy stuff. They're making that Golden Axe show, supposedly. But I don't know when we're going to get a trailer or a release date for that. But there's going to be a reboot of Jet Set Radio as well, which is another beloved game. There's going to be a Shinobi and a Streets of Rage reboots. All of these have been announced. Crazy Taxi is just the latest one, but none of them have release dates. They're just like, Sega keeps putting these things out where they're like, hey, this is going to happen. But we don't really have any sort of details about them.
Yeah, that's crazy to me. Yeah, I'll be very curious to see what this game actually looks like. But
I don't know. We don't know. I don't have a lot of memories of Crazy Taxi, but I think it took place in like a California-esque setting. Like I recall maybe there being a coast. Does that sound right to you? Like, was it San Francisco?
Vaguely. I know it was like very bright and sunny, and yeah, you had like, what was the name of that band that was like, I don't know, like alt rock from like the 90s or early 2000s. Started with an O. What is the name of that band? Anyway, that's like the one thing every time I think of the Dreamcast, I immediately think of Crazy Taxi and that like yeah song that starts up as soon as you start playing it, whatever it is. Anyway,
it'll be interesting to see. The next thing we're going to talk about, Zach, is something I am cautiously optimistic about. It's been in supposedly development hell for 10 years, but they finally have started shooting the Watch Dogs movie, which is kind of crazy because I feel like they announced this right after the first Watch Dogs came out, which was 2012, so over 10 years ago. But they finally, they shared on their Twitter account, Ubisoft, like, hey, we're actually starting filming this. But I think it is going to be an adaptation of the first game, which is a little bit of a bummer because I think I've talked about this on the podcast before. I prefer the second game's story because it's more of like a direct sequel to Hackers, kind of, or, a spiritual sequel, where it's like a group of, basically high school, college age people taken down, like literally hacking the planet at one point. That was a very cool reference in that game. But this is going to be Aiden Pierce's story, who is a troubled guy in Chicago. I don't know if they're keeping the Chicago setting. But what are your thoughts? Are you excited for this, or are you kind of like, I don't know about this?
Well, I'm a little hesitant with pretty much any movie that gets announced now.
Yeah.
Unless it's like, I don't know, Christopher Nolan or the guy that directed the Dune movies. But weird to me that maybe we're just getting to this point with video game adaptations where it doesn't necessarily need a tie-in or like, a recent release to like build hype around it. But way too late to release a movie based on that first game, considering how long ago it was. But yeah, I don't know. I think you're right. I don't. The second one may not have been a huge seller, but Aiden Pierce is not anyone's favorite, main character of a video game series. So,
well, and I wonder if this got sold as like, hey, we can basically make our own John Wick, but with like a guy with a cell phone, basically. I wonder what the budget is like on this. If it's just going to be like super low budget, just like a guy. I don't know. I'm so curious to see if they're going to have like DedSec in this. If like anything from Watch Dogs 2 or Watch Dogs Legion is going to be in this, or if it's just going to be a singular story, like told almost 1-to-1, like the game. Like I wonder if it's going to end like the first game did, where spoilers for the first game, you give that guy a heart attack because you like hack his defibrillator or whatever. He's like behind a glass wall. I don't remember super how that ended, or even what the plot was. I know his sister died and he was sad, or maybe it was his wife. Do you remember the plot of Watch Dogs?
I only played Watch Dogs Legion, and that one I don't think you could do an adaptation of because there's not a central character. Yeah. You're just sort of playing as whoever you recruit off the street, and then when that person dies, there's permadeath, and so you just switch to one of your other recruits.
I could see this doing well if they go the route of like that Bob Odenkirk movie, like that Nobody, I think it was called, or like a John Wick, where it's just like one guy taking on an organization, but also he has a cell phone that can like turn the power off. Or
I think of it more as like a James Bond, but instead of like classy British, spy, it's more like gritty, like tech-based hacking stuff.
I'll be interested to see. There hasn't been a really good hacking movie, I feel like, recently. Obviously, my favorite movie is Hackers. We've talked about it on the podcast. There was that Black Hat one with Chris Hemsworth like 7 years ago or something. I don't know. I'm so curious to see anything about this. I don't know that they've released casting information for this, I don't think.
Yeah, I was going to say, who's writing and directing this? Because that might be something to look at.
I guess a guy named Tom Blythe is going to be in this, who I have not heard of.
Sure, yeah, Tom Blythe. I don't know.
But it's being directed by Matthew Turi, who I also...
Matthew Turi?
Mixed, doesn't have a great track record, it's looking like. First picture is him dressed up as a guy from Greece, it seems like, with a leather jacket on when you Google him. Not giving me a ton of hope.
Let me pull up the old IMDb. He's known for Watch Dogs, which incidentally hasn't come out yet. A short called Sons of Chaos. He directed another short called Broken. He directed the 5.3 star out of 10 rating Hostile movie from 2017. And Meander from 2020 with a solid 5.4. And then
out of 5?
In 2023, the Deep Dark with a star rating of 5.7 out of 10. So, they're going up just very slowly. Started with 5.3, went to 5.4, and then 5.7 last year. So,
doesn't give me a ton of hope. I think the way to make this successful is to make it a John Wick, where you lean into the action side of it. So, if they're not doing that, I don't know. It's famously very hard to make hacking look cool on screen. Yeah. And so if they can't do that, it's going to be not good. People loved, what was that Rami Malek show that made him famous?
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Robot.
Mr. Robot.
That was a cool show and didn't really have action. So maybe if they do sort of a Mr. Robot type thing.
That's what I was going to say. I think it almost needs to be more James Bond style or something like a Mr. Robot where it's, not necessarily about somebody who's like this John Wick style, like action fighter type of person, but somebody who like you have to come up with an interesting way to show hacking and build tension that way. But
I have a very important question for you before we move on to the next story.
Okay.
Do you think Aiden Pierce will have his iconic jacket in this movie?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's like the one thing anybody knows about Aiden Aiden Pierce is his jacket and the hat and everything.
His little scarf he puts up over his nose.
Yeah. I mean,
I hope so.
I do think this is the problem with Hollywood right now. Like, Mathau Turi, why would you give this guy a multi-million-dollar budget to make a giant, blockbuster style movie? Like, I don't know. This is part of the problem. What in his history or, filmography would lead you to throw that amount of money at this guy?
It is crazy because you see the trend of like, whoa, this indie director has made like 1 or 2 movies. Let's give him a Marvel movie and just see what happens.
Yeah, that's part of the problem. So I don't know. I think it was like a fun trend there for a while that like really they thought, oh, we can definitely do this. It's almost like casting the director, not necessarily
well, they want people they can control. They want like someone who's kind of not steady on their feet, who's not going to make big decisions and is just going to take studio notes.
Well, a lot of that is because, especially with the Marvel movies, like so much of that stuff is probably even shot or done before the director even comes on board, because it's so much of it is effects shots that they just need their effects team to work on. And so they're like, we'll get somebody who's good at directing actors and they'll just concentrate on the scenes, like just direct this scene and we'll have that done. And then, but the film itself is already decided. I think the one sort of exception is Taika Waititi with that Thor movie that like was super well liked and was really funny and sort of like overnight shifted the perspective on that character from like, oh, those movies are kind of boring and dull to like, oh, this is actually really fun. And so ever since then, Hollywood's been like, we'll just find some indie person who's like sort of known and
a golden goose.
Yeah. And they'll like be able to do something interesting with this, but like, that's kind of not the formula anymore. So I don't know.
We got some good news from Nintendo. Somebody asked one of their, maybe the president, Fukuwara, they asked him about availability of what the Switch 2 is going to be. Because previous Nintendo consoles have been difficult to get. The Wii was obviously the most difficult, but that was because of a shortage of like accelerometers back in the day, because cell phones were just becoming a thing, and they needed those for the Wiimotes. The Switch, we didn't have any trouble getting. We got it on the first day. But I think other people had trouble getting the Switch, and so they've come out and said that they are going to work really hard to meet customer demand. They're going to be sufficiently produced. They're making a ton of them. There's no capacitor shortage or anything like that. They're going to be using interesting techniques to subvert scalpers, they've said. They're going to hopefully implement other measures tailored to specific regions to address that issue. So the end of that is hopefully it will be much easier to get a Switch, because like this is riding off of PS5s and Xbox Series X's.
That's what I was going to say.
Basically, they weren't able to be purchased
for a long time. The big concern was like availability because of like chip shortages and stuff like that. Like for years, you couldn't get a PS5 or an Xbox. And so obviously the big concern with, a new Switch console is going to launch. Is it going to be like the same deal where if you're super quick, you might be able to pre-order one, or like order one and have it shipped to you? But then like scalpers are just like buying all of the very limited like stock of them and then reselling them online for insane prices. So yeah, if they can avoid that situation with Switch 2, then very good. Hopefully they've come up with some ideas to combat that.
Still no announcement, and still no name. We don't know if it's called the Switch 2 or what it's called, but maybe sometime in the fall we'll get that reveal, and that'll be very exciting.
I'm still holding out hope for them to just call it Super Nintendo Switch.
I think that's a really good idea.
Because I think I think that would be awesome.
The SNES.
Yeah. SNES, yeah.
And finally, well, not finally, but this piece of news, SGDQ 2024 is happening right now, and I've been watching a couple of runs as I can, and I wanted to shout out just 5 that I thought were cool. I probably will have more next week that I've watched once I sift through all the recordings, but there's a really cool Morrowind one for people who have nostalgia for Morrowind. They really break the game in a lot of fun ways. It's not an any %, it's an all quests. So they do a thing where they become super powerful within the limits of the game. They actually do a crazy thing where they play on the 1.0 patch of the game for a certain amount of time, and then they close the game, drag their save file, like in File Explorer, over to the directory for the Game of the Year edition game, launch the Game of the Year edition of the game, and then play that same save file, and that does something crazy. But they have to complete all the main quests, so there's a lot of running around, and you get to see a lot of classic characters and things like that. The Animal Well one is crazy because it's actually 2 runs. The first run is an all flames, like completing the game, no flute, because the flute obviously makes it very easy. And that takes about 20 minutes. And it's very interesting to see the pathing they've done, because you don't have to get any eggs for this one. He's just going for all the flames. They do a crazy thing where they get the disc early and make it so that the dog wolf spirit doesn't chase you. So they do that one, and then they do one with the flute, which the routing in that is just to get 8 eggs as soon as possible so you can get the flute. And then that takes like no time. That one takes like 6 minutes. But those are both super good. There's a Shell Shock remake, System Shock remake speed run by that guy Blood Thunder, who I think is very charismatic and good at running games. He always has lots of good info. There's a race for Enter the Gungeon where 2 people are playing a crazy way to play Enter the Gungeon, where each floor they get like a rainbow chest that has like super rare items, and so the run takes a bunch of crazy turns because they both keep getting crazy items. And then finally, probably the one you've heard of, is there's a Ken Griffey Jr. presents MLB game that is played by a dog. They brought the dog in from I think AGDQ. He played remotely, but he's actually in the studio at the hotel or whatever where they're doing it at. And he has a little controller that's like kind of like a basketball that he presses on, and he will click down on it, and I think he wins the game by doing like a crazy home run, and everyone gets very excited. It's very cool to see. But definitely check out that one by Peanut Butter the Dog. It's a great little run.
Yeah, whenever you can watch a dog, I'm on board.
I'll have more probably once I sift through the rest of the recordings. But those are just 5 I think are pretty cool to check out.
What if I told you that I had a very special delivery this week?
I think I know what you're going to say because you texted me a picture of it, and I was astounded because I forgot you ordered it.
Yeah, I had a little bit forgotten I ordered it as well because it had been a long time and there was like some delays along the way. So what I'm talking about is the deluxe edition of Baldur's Gate 3 finally arrived in the mail. I got it on PS5, which means I was very last to receive it because I think the other editions, like there was some delay for some reason on the PS5 version, but yeah, it's very cool. I opened it up and went through it, and they did actually, I didn't know they were going to do this. Maybe I didn't read the fine print closely enough, but they sent me out in email a code for the digital version so I could already just download it on PS5 and start playing.
Nice. Get it early.
Even before the box arrived. But yeah, very cool. There's a 3-disc CD soundtrack that came with it. A little world map came with it. I think there's a poster as well, and then like a bunch of stickers and a couple of patches. I don't really use patches, but yeah, that all came with it. And I think supposedly this is like the feature complete version. So ideally, even if they like ever shut down like the PlayStation servers. Store or whatever, or the servers or anything, I should still be able to pop this in my old PS5 and play it forever and ever. But I have not started yet. It literally just arrived yesterday as we're recording this, and I have not had a chance to start it yet. But it's very cool. I am now like debating with myself whether I want to try to like force myself through the rest of Dragon's Dogma 2, which sounds like I'm not enjoying it. I am enjoying Dragon's Dogma 2. But do I want to like really commit and try to like progress through that game, or do I want to like start Baldur's Gate 3, which, you know, maybe I will never go back to Dragon's Dogma 2 if I start
That's true.
Baldur's Gate 3 at this point. But it's a huge game. I'm kind of excited to start it just based on all the positive talk about it up to this point. So I will do that weird thing where you like you sort of engage with a game like a year or more after its like initial wave of like excitement and discussion, and you get to sort of retroactively like go back and like listen to all the podcasts and all the discussions about it. And fortunately there will be, you know, many videos of like guides and help to get through stuff if I am ever stuck or lost. But so that I guess is a benefit. But so I will eventually get to that, and we'll have more to talk about that on the show, I guess. But
very excited for that. I at some point will also play Baldur's Gate 3, but I have not done it yet.
I feel like we should like sync up and try to play it at the same time so that we
That's not a bad idea.
Go back and forth on it. But well, I guess we'll have to try that at a future date. But are we ready to get into what we're playing, watching, reading this week?
Let's dive into it. I want to hear what you've been reading, because maybe I have been reading the same thing.
So, well, I'm still reading Empire of Silence, which is, I don't know how to pronounce the guy's name, but it is like this very highly recommended sci-fi sort of fantasy futuristic book that is, I want to say, at least in part inspired by like the Dune series, maybe, but I'm really liking it so far.
I'm reading that too.
Are you? Did you finally pick it up? Because I know we talked about it probably a few months ago. I had started it, but I'm really getting into it now, and so I've been reading it a lot more lately.
I'm still in the first book. I'm maybe like only 60 pages in or something. But yeah, I started it last week. Yeah,
that's cool. Yeah. I don't know how many books they're in yet, but I think there's another one that's coming out later this year. And I am like probably 400 some pages in now. And wow. I think it's like 500 or 600 pages or something like that. So I'm like getting towards the back half of the book, and I'm really enjoying it. And I'm already like, I know I'm going to pick up the next book as soon as I finish this one. But yeah, so I won't say too much about it since you're also joining in. Where are you at so far, I guess, in the story?
Well, how spoilery should we get? I guess people don't really, if they're going to read it, they're going to read it.
I don't know. I forget how old this book is at this point, but we're only talking about the first book, and within like the first 50, 60 pages of it. So
they just killed his old man that he loved.
Yeah. So it goes on a journey for sure. Yeah. After that. But I don't want to.
I assume he's just about to leave the planet, which is when it really kicks off.
Yeah. But yeah, a very cool sort of spacefaring sci-fi story that I'm into.
Yeah. I'm excited to read more of it. We'll do once we both finish. Wait, so are you done with the first book, or are you into the second book?
I'm like 400 pages into the first book still.
Maybe when we both finish it, we can do a little book club on it.
Yeah. So I guess stay tuned for that as well.
Yeah.
Also, I have been listening via audiobook to the first Dune book.
Oh.
Which is interesting to sort of be going back and forth between Empire of Silence and the first Dune book. But also like Dune 2, the movie, just fairly recently got its like home video release, I guess you would call it. And yeah, from what I've heard, the first book more or less like encompasses the first two movies.
True.
So, yeah, I'm still working my way through that first book, and then I will listen to that, and I think I'll probably use my credits because I'm subscribed to Audible, and you get a credit every month, and so I'll probably spend it on that next book and just keep going through that.
Who narrates Dune?
I mean, I don't know the guy's name.
Is it not? They didn't get like a special actor for since it came out as a movie.
No. So the first guy reads. It almost feels like they read the audiobook at one point, and then they were like, "Oh, this is like a big thing. We need to like spice this up some." And so they went back and they like got different people to voice different characters.
Oh.
And they just like layered it over top of it, but they didn't always remember all the lines that they needed to, because sometimes it's still the narrator voicing like certain characters, and then other times it's like, oh no, they got like somebody to do a voice for this. It's really weird because like the Baron Harkonnen character like has this like sort of deep booming voice sometimes by like a different voice actor, and then sometimes it's still the narrator and you're like, ooh, you must have missed that line. But otherwise, yeah, I'm enjoying it so far.
Well, I watched a little movie called The Boy and the Heron, which is available to purchase on Google Play now.
How was it?
I loved it. So typically I'll watch subbed anime with the original Japanese audio, but for whatever reason, Studio Ghibli movies, I like to watch the dubs, usually because they get like big name actors. And so I watched the English one because I had heard that Robert Pattinson voices the Heron, and he does like a crazy job. And he really does. He really contorts his voice to sound like other like a bird almost. He does a great job, and Dave Bautista is a bird in it that is like a bird king. That in his voice is very easy to recognize, but it was great. It was I like more, I think, the like child adventure style Ghibli movies, like The Cat Returns and Spirited Away, and I veer away sort of from the more serious sad ones. And so this one is right up my alley because it's another one where a kid sort of has to go on a fantastical journey. The one knock against it, I think usually Ghibli movies have like very iconic scores, and this score didn't really hit me as like super iconic. It was just sort of dissonant piano sounds sometimes.
Was it still Joe Hisaishi?
I don't know if it was, but maybe I just need to listen to it more. But there was not really like a big musical cue that really like took my breath away. Like something in like Howl's Moving Castle or something.
Yeah, I was gonna say a lot of those like immediately the first time you're like, oh, the soundtrack's great.
Yeah. And maybe I just need to listen to it again, but I highly recommend it. It probably will be rentable in the next couple of weeks if you don't want to buy it, and then eventually probably it's going to be put onto Max for free, but I couldn't wait. I had to watch it.
Well, I also watched a movie. We had talked about Godzilla -1 recently, and I had not at the time watched the new Western Godzilla movie, but I have corrected that now. I watched Godzilla X Kong, the new Empire, and I thought it was bad.
Yeah, it's big trash, but it's fun to watch, I think.
Yeah, I letterboxed a review of it.
Oh, I should check my app. Because we're friends on Letterboxd.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you talking about Letterboxd recently made me think I should finally log back into that and start logging movies again if I watch something. So I watched Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire, and yeah, I think that movie makes no sense.
Yeah.
Like, what exactly is the plot of it? Like, what? They go to, there's like the Earth within the Earth,
the Hollow Earth,
but then there's another one. Like, there's a second,
there's more Hollow
Earth. 2
Earth.
layers deep. There's another Earth within the Earth, which makes no sense.
Yeah.
But they go there, and I remember at one point so they have this like blogger podcaster guy who's with them, for unknown reasons. But he's there.
Comedic relief.
What's up?
He's for comedy. That's like, there's no like
he's the
plot
comic
reason
relief.
he's there.
Yeah.
Just like the writer of the script was like, someone has to be reacting to this, so
yeah,
I'm gonna have this guy be here.
And so he's got a camera with him, and he's like shooting stuff, and the guy's like, "Don't you think it would be bad to show this to the world? Because then they're gonna come here and it'll be terrible." And it's like, you have a highly specialized spacecraft, basically, that goes through this really crazy like wormhole thing in order to get here. I don't think it's gonna be an issue.
Also, doesn't everyone know about it? I feel like everyone knows about Godzilla.
Yeah,
like,
you can't hide it. But anyway, it's just like ridiculous writing where you like, did the writers even know what movie they were writing?
Yeah.
But it's stuff like that. And also, like, I thought for a while, I thought I was watching a Planet of the Apes movie because, like, I don't know, Kong is so human-like that you almost expect him to start talking at some point.
It is crazy. They have all those, like, ape on ape scenes, but they're constricted by the fact that none of them are able to talk. So
yeah,
they sort of just like all understand what's going on innately because they can't have dialogue. But like they basically point, and even the audience doesn't know what's going on, but they've figured it out.
They have like some sort of grunt language where they just kind of grunt at each other and maybe point and do hand motions, and they just like know what they're talking about.
I remember so he initially is beat up by those apes, and there's the baby ape. He beats up all the big apes, and then the baby ape he's like looming over, and then he just kind of like nudges it, and I was like, what's gonna happen? And then the baby, I guess, just knows like, oh, I'm supposed to lead him back to my people, which I wouldn't have figured out, but I guess that's what's happening.
Oh, okay. Well, he wants to meet my people, I guess. Also, like, maybe it was just me, but it seemed like the size of the creatures in this was changing scene to scene. Like, I could not get a sense of scale of like how big Kong was versus how big Godzilla was, and like all the other apes in this. It was very unclear to me.
They had to make Kong bigger. In Kong Skull Island, he was like a more manageable height, just because that's how they shot that movie. But then to be an enemy to Godzilla, he would need to be much, much bigger because Godzilla's huge. Right. And so there's like some throwaway line about like, oh, I guess he never stopped growing from back in the day, because he's like way bigger than he was in Kong Skull Island. But it's so hard to keep track of that, especially when there's all those scenes where for such long amounts of time there's no humans. You just forget that he's giant because everything is just like a big scale.
Well, and also like there's that ice breathing Titan that I forget the name of, and like the first time you see like Kong looking at that creature, it seems like he's dwarfed by that. And then later they're just like riding on top of them, and they're like it's pretty size similar. And I'm just like, I cannot grasp how big these creatures are supposed to be in comparison to each other, and in comparison to like if they're in like a cityscape. Are they the size of skyscrapers or not? I don't know. So that was disorienting, I thought. But yeah, I would say not as good in any world as Godzilla -1. I still need to watch Shin Godzilla, but
oh my god, that's the best one. That's my favorite one.
I know, I need to watch that one, but yeah, I did watch this one and it was not good, and I wrote a little thing on Letterboxd about it. But
well, I have picked up Luigi's Mansion 2. Did you pick it up?
I picked it up, but I haven't started it yet. This is like one that I will probably wait and play in like October when it's like closer to spooky season. But
yeah, that's a good idea.
But have you started it?
Yeah, we're on the second mansion. So in this one, a lot of it is like it's not as refined as Luigi's Mansion 3, which is a little bit of a bummer, but it is still pretty good. And there's a lot of like little Nintendo touches that make it great. But whereas 3 was in one big hotel, which I think was the correct thing to do, where it like keeps it all in one place and there's not really any breaks in gameplay. This one is mission based, and so you start out at the first mansion, and you go back to the same mansion, but things are like a little different every time, and you have to do different things. It's like basically Mario 64 as opposed to Odyssey or like Galaxy or any of those, where you're jumping into a painting basically, and then you have to do something specific in this world, and then you jump out of the world, and then you go back to that world with like different goals basically, which I think a better version of that is Luigi's Mansion 3, where you're just always in the world doing different stuff on different floors of the same hotel.
Where they have a different themed land for their amusement park.
Yeah. Which this one, maybe there will be different themes. We just made it to the second mansion because these are split up. You'll have like 1A, 1B, 1C. All the ones are the first mansion, and then we just got to twos. Those are the second mansion you find. And then I think it's more of a plant-based mansion, but it is still definitely a mansion. And so we just got there, and it's been pretty good. The boss fight was interesting. I think it's going to be... It seems like a lot of game, because I think there's going to be like 4 or 5 mansions, and all of them are going to have like 4 or 5 levels. So I think we're going to be playing it for a while, but
there is that like extra sort of co-op mode that's like,
yes, yeah,
I forget what they called it, but
Scare something. I don't remember what it's called, but I would say it's great. It's if you love Luigi's Mansion 3, it's not as good as Luigi's Mansion 3, but it's definitely worth playing. You can definitely tell it used to be a DS game, but they've up-resed everything and pretty much solved a lot of the problems. Although his the way you communicate with the scientist is you take out a little DS and he talks to you through the DS. But it's great. We're loving it.
Yeah, I still feel like they should have remastered the first one as well and had this as like a 2-pack where it was Luigi's Mansion 1 and 2. But
a huge value.
But yeah, I'll still play it later this year and enjoy it, I'm sure. I have played some more Dragon's Dogma 2. I don't really have anything new or interesting to say about it, but I did recently jump back into Animal Crossing New Horizons for some reason.
Ooh.
I was like, I don't know about you, but I'll play a game and then a year later I'll be like, I'll start reminiscing about it. Man, I should jump back into that game. And for whatever reason, that happened recently with Animal Crossing, and so I jumped back in and have put some more time into my island. And I can tell I was playing it in like April and May of last year because that's when all my badges are from, like the Nook Miles or whatever. Like every completed thing was from then. But sometimes you just need a cozy, chill sort of farming sim / collectathon thing to sort of, I don't know, relax with and not take super seriously.
I agree.
And I love the whole concept of the time of day in game is synced with the real time of day in real life, and also like the time of year is also synced up. So you'll get like special seasonal items and crafting material and things like that, or things to craft with your DIY projects in game based on the season that you're currently in. And I just really love the idea of that. And it's also one of those games where there's like no actual end point. There's no like completion. There's no you completed all the quests, so here's the credits. It's just sort of a play it as much as you want, and if you want to bounce off of it for a while, that's fine. Come back later in a different season and have different stuff to do, and you just keep going with it indefinitely. So a fun time that I still recommend.
There you go.
Yeah. Anything else, or are you ready to hit us with your parting wisdom?
You know, Zach, we talked about this before we started recording. This is my parting wisdom. Hot dogs are great. I'll say that right now. I ate some hot dogs for 4th of July. But a problem with hot dogs sometimes is that you can't put enough toppings on them. Especially if you're going to do like a coney dog, like a thing where you put maybe some chili on it and some diced onions and cheese. Sometimes a bun won't cut it. But I saw a thing online that I tried and it worked out great. And you get those Hawaiian rolls, not the sweet variant, but the butter flavor, or like a savory butter variant. And you kind of rip 2 of those off, but they're still connected, and then cut it like a hot dog. and then you kind of can split it open, and then they recommend like putting it on the same thing you're grilling the hot dogs on with some butter, and it really comes out looking like Cane's toast, kind of, from Raising Cane's. But then you can split that open, and it's a huge hot dog bun that you can put a hot dog as well as like numerous toppings if you're some crazy person that likes Chicago-style hot dogs, or if you want to put like chili and cheese and whatnot. But a great little treat. It really pluses up the hot dog to have this big, fluffy, buttery bun. And that is my parting wisdom, is to try out different kinds of hot dog buns.
And on that note, go ahead and follow us at Starside Cafe on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. And we'll catch you on the next one.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.